Welcome back, everybody. I am Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace. With me, of course, is Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. And today we're going to talk a little bit about preparing for a job search. And I think there's two kinds of searches. Search number one is when it's a voluntary search. Search number two is when it is a forced search. And so while there's definitely some overlap, we're going to talk about them individually. Ellen, my partner in crime, is in fact an expert in the private sector. And so there's probably way more forced searches in the private sector than there is in the government. I'm an expert and I focus on federal government. And again, while there is certainly forced job search, it's less common in the federal sector. So Ellen, why don't we start with you? And we can start with a forced job search.
Right. So Nancy, a forced job search is basically when several things could occur. You show up to work one day and find out the doors are locked and the business has gone out of business. That happens in the private sector. You could be working for a government subcontractor maybe and find out they don't get any new contracts and therefore they give you 2 to 3 weeks notice and they're going to be shutting down. It could be layoffs, it could be anything. So anything that really has happened from the employer side that forces you to be let go. Because I've actually had clients call me from their car as they're leaving the parking lot. And I do want to remind everybody that you do need to take a moment to grieve, to kind of go through those anger stages and understand you have been through something traumatic, because it is traumatic to walk in and find out your company has closed down.
Or just let you go.
Right. Or just let you go for whatever reasons. And depending on the state and their laws, they could let you go in South Carolina for basically no warning, no reason, no whatever. Some states don't have the best laws as far as that goes. So it's very difficult to keep a positive attitude when this happens to you. So give yourself a little bit of time to grieve, kind of work yourself through it. But then you have to kind of get yourself back into that positive thinking and heal and move forward. I would say my number one thing on that would be to immediately file for unemployment, because I have clients who will call and they're like, I've been unemployed for 4 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, you're applying for unemployment? And they're like, yeah, I'll go down tomorrow. And then they find out tomorrow it's another 4 to 6 weeks before a check will come. And don't make that mistake. Go down immediately and apply for unemployment, because usually if you've been let go, you're entitled to unemployment.
Depending on the reason, the process for unemployment varies from state to state.
Excellent point, Nancy. And the amount you receive is different based on state to state.
Absolutely. But again, your point is well taken. You should apply. Now, I should say that the states that don't require any kind of notice or any of that sort of thing, those are typically, and ironically in my view, called right to work states. And in the federal government, in most cases, you will be given a minimum of 30 days notice before you are removed from federal service. The exception to that is if you are a probationary employee, no notice is required in most cases. But again, your same concepts, Ellen, absolutely apply. Allow yourself time to grieve. Don't say anything stupid on your way out the door.
Don't post anything bad on social media. I'll add that.
Yes, absolutely. And apply for unemployment. Yes, you're entitled. It does not make you a failure. People lose jobs for a wide range of reasons, justified and not justified. The key thing is to figure out, if you can, what happened, why it happened, and put together a strategy for moving forward. And if you're not sure, you should also remember that if you have lost your job, you very well may be entitled to what's called COBRA, which is continued health insurance. You may be, depending on the situation, if your organization did not have health insurance or had a certain kind, you may be eligible to get health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. And if at all possible, be prepared if you notice things going on in your organization that seem to indicate that life may not be stable.
When you're at work, don't be at work with blinders on. Pay attention. And if you start to notice things are going awry, multiple managers are leaving, it seems to be falling apart, that would be the time to start looking and putting together a job search plan. The best plan is never leave one job until you have another job. I mean, that saying's been around forever, but sometimes we're not fortunate to have that happen. So again, as soon as you start to get the feeling in your gut that you should be leaving, you're probably right. First thing is first, though, is if it's going to be a voluntary choice and you're going to start looking, first thing I always recommend is take a look at your budget. Start cutting back on all the things you don't really need, start saving money right away so that if your job search takes a little longer than you anticipate, and for some reason it does become a involuntary, you have some savings. Finances come first, even in a job search.
I would suggest that before the finances, although I totally agree that pay attention, know what your budget is, know what you really need to live as opposed to how you like to live, is make sure that you are not keeping your personal documents on your work computer.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we've covered this a few times in other podcasts. Again, that is a big mistake people make. Please make sure you take home any personal documents, any performance evaluations, and please make sure you are not taking any confidential information that employers could find out and follow up and charge you with something. So again, only take what you're allowed to take.
And keep your personal stuff personal on your personal equipment.
Correct. At home, personal.
Absolutely. Something else I see people do when they become unemployed, they go to LinkedIn and they put that little thing that LinkedIn has now, open to work. I don't know how you feel about this, Ellen, but I have never met a hiring manager that says, I want to hire someone who's unemployed.
That's right, Nancy. I don't ever hear that either. In all the years I did headhunting or executive recruiting, again, there is still that belief that they want to kind of steal away an employee. And I think it's interesting that LinkedIn hasn't done any big blogs or articles or any like, woohoo, this little label we invented is getting people noticed. So the fact that they're not really talking about the data on that, I don't really think people are having much success. Just because you lose your job today doesn't mean you have to jump on LinkedIn and put your end date and change it, and make sure it's robust, it represents you well. And for the first 90 days, just leave it as far as you're employed, and then go back and change it once you find a job. Or if you're out of a job for a while, then you need to change it and update it.
But I still wouldn't put that little thing on it. And I would make an effort to take on some volunteer activities so that you can show that you are doing something.
Right.
Even if it's not full time.
Right. So one of the biggest mistakes I see people making in the job search is they don't practice or even think about how they're going to introduce themselves when they're out networking. So they go out networking and somebody says, oh, what brought you here today, or what's going on with you, or whatever. And then they go into this long story of how they were let go and how the employer, did this. And at the end of the day, you've told that person nothing about you. Sometimes that comes from a place of that negative thinking and being angry still, you're still hurt. But really, when you start a job search, one of the first things, again, is make sure you're doing your finances and all that good stuff. But then one of the things before you start networking is really make sure you know what you're going to say about yourself. Hi, my name is Ellen Steverson. I have extensive experience in XYZ. Excited to be here tonight as I look for new opportunities in manufacturing and blah, blah, blah. Really start off the conversation on a positive. You don't need to start telling people immediately you're unemployed or even searching. You want to come across as a thought leader and highly skilled in your field.
So let's expand on that. So let's say I've been let go, or I've decided it's time to put together a job search plan and start looking. So one thing you've talked about is making sure that our financial situation is understood and manageable. And I would suggest that in a perfect world, if you have a choice, make sure you have 4 to 12 months worth of finances put away. The old days, we used to say you need a week for every $1,000 you want to make, or $10,000 a month. There's all different kinds of sayings out there. And while it is certainly true that some people can get a job tomorrow, realistically, even highly skilled people can take 4 to 12 months to get a job. Would you agree with that?
It does take a while, and there's many factors to impact that. I think a lot of people apply to one job a week and they think they're looking for a job. That is not looking for a job. My clients are instructed to apply to as many as 35 jobs a week. Okay, so you want to be applying to 6 jobs every single day, Monday through Friday, to get your resume out there. Right now, the statistics I've been tracking is about 51 applications generate 1 phone call. So, and then it kind of snowballs from there. And again, these would be very strong, well-written, keyword-rich resumes. So again, make sure you have a good resume for your job search.
Okay, so let's kind of think about this in order. So first we have financial stuff. Then what are the things we need to be doing to plan a job search? First, as you mentioned, get a resume. Whether you write it yourself or have somebody else write it for you, you need a resume. And that resume should not be generic.
Correct. It should be a targeted resume because those keywords are critical with the applicant tracking software.
Okay. So having a resume is critical. Networking, which you alluded to a few minutes ago, also critical. But what if I don't like anybody? Or what if I'm shy? Do I still have to network?
Well, I think people really need to think about networking a little differently. When I find people say, well, I'm shy, I don't like it, they're thinking of going to like a chamber event or an association event with 50 people they don't know. I think of networking for a job as having conversations with people you know, even in your inner circle. You think your best friend knows what you do, but she really doesn't know what you do. They don't understand how good you are at it. Again, you have to educate and coach your inner circle, and then you let that then expand into other networks. So really think of it as networking as having a conversation with somebody, and you don't want the conversation where you're just complaining the whole time. It's more about telling them, hey, this is what I'm really good at. Here's my resume. These are the type of companies I'd like to work for. Would you happen to know anybody that might work at Bosch, say? So make sure you're using these targeted companies that are in the area that you have determined would be a good fit for you. And when you do that, that's part of your plan. One of the little tidbits I like to give, but just about every county in America has what's called an economic development center, and they are in charge of attracting and retaining businesses in your county. So if you go to the county website and look up Economic Development Center, they usually have a huge list of all the different companies, aviation, aeronautical, manufacturing, whatever. You can start targeting specific companies. This way, when you're having conversations with your friends, family, and your network, you can use specific, hey, I'd like to meet somebody over at Robert Bosch Corporation. And all of a sudden they're like, hey, my friend Joe works there. You want me to introduce you to him? And that's what networking can be.
And another great tool while we're talking about that is American Job Centers. These are U.S. Department of Labor funded organizations in most counties across the country, especially designed to help match job seekers with employers. They offer opportunities for reskilling, certification programs, learning about a modern job search. If you have not done a job search in 20 years, it is not the same. So there are free tools out there
Mhm.
available to assist you. Some of you, if you were let go as part of a larger layoff, there may be outplacement services. Now, of course, the quality of those outplacement services varies, but take advantage of what's offered.
Mhm.
And if you're let go and it's just by yourself, depending on the level you are in the organization, you may be able to negotiate a certain level of outplacement service. So that's something you should be thinking about as well. I'm sorry, Ellen, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to add the American Job Center also has a great apprenticeship programs that people often don't realize. So if you're at a job that you've been working for say 10 years and you absolutely hate your job, why don't you take this as an opportunity if you've been let go to a reduction in force or something, maybe to retrain yourself. Like they have a great apprenticeship for women in mostly male dominated fields. Maybe this is the time to get involved in an apprenticeship program through the American Job Center and learn something you'll absolutely love. So even in the wake of something devastating, something positive might come of it.
So that's great. We need to get our finances in order. We need to network. We need a resume. And then I think the other point you made earlier is that we need to practice what we're going to say to people. We need to practice our elevator pitch. We need to practice how are we going to answer the question, why were you let go? What else do you think we need to be doing?
Why did you decide to leave? Or even if you haven't left yet, why are you looking for a new job? So really be mindful of the interview is going to happen. Prepare yourself. Make sure you have positive stories. And I can't stress it enough that, during this time of job search and uncertainty, people often don't realize how negative they're talking. And you do want to come across as very positive, very hopeful, and really as qualified as you can for the job. So if they're talking 3 or 4 skills on the job posting, those are the 3 or 4 skills you discuss with them. Don't talk photography, even though that might be your love and passion, to somebody who needs somebody to do a CNC machine. So again, make sure you're talking well about yourself so that you can get an offer.
Anything else you think we should be talking about in terms of preparing for a job search?
Other than take it very seriously, because again, if you decide to go across country in a car and had no map or no GPS, it would take you much longer and you'd probably get lost multiple times. Same thing with a job search. When you have a plan of attack, you write out your network, write down all the people you know. And I mean, everybody you can think of, even the mail lady. Hey, Miss Mail Lady, is there any new businesses around the bend I haven't seen lately? You'd be shocked what she might tell you. So again, craft a plan and then make it happen.
And I just want to add one thing on the federal front,
Mm-hmm.
because most of what we've talked about goes both ways. But a lot of people come to me after they've been let go from the private sector and they say, I want a federal job, but I need it by the end of this month. No, I'm sorry. Getting a federal job takes much longer than the end of this month. So I advise people who do want federal jobs to register on usajobs.gov, set up their search agents so they see job postings, but not let go of their private sector job search, because to get a federal job can take anywhere from 3 to 6 or 12 to 18 months. And so while I'm a big fan of federal employment, it is not a quick fix, and you should be looking in the private sector concurrently with the federal government. So I wanted to make sure we hit on that point.
And that also brings up a good point that happens a lot in the private sector. My client will get an offer, but it's not their dream job. And they have now exhausted their funding and they're at a point where they have to say yes. And, we want to encourage everyone to make good decisions and accept jobs and go in with hoping that it'll be a long-term employee type of 2 to 5 years, that you're going to stay. But occasionally it does happen where you accept a job. Let's just say you applied for a federal job and you applied for a private sector job. You accept a job at the private sector, and 3 months later, the federal government calls you. What should you do? Again, that's still part of your job search. And if you want to interview and you love that job, accept it and then go in and politely give your 2 weeks notice. And if that's just a short-term gig, that's totally okay. But again, sometimes that happens with the job search. Your dream job doesn't come for 3 to 4 months later and you've already started something. If you know it's the right job, don't pass it up. Go in and have another conversation.
I think that's a great point. And I know people who have multiple jobs pending, even multiple federal jobs. Well, I accepted this one. What if this one comes down? At the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you, your career, and your loved ones. And as long as you are polite and professional about the decisions you're making and sharing those decisions, it's fine.
Right. Agree. It's been a wonderful conversation about the job search today.
Yes. And we all have to make a job search during our careers. So thank you very much, Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. I'm Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace. Thank you very much, and we will see you next time. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit Nancy or Ellen's website for additional information about our services, a free tip sheet which highlights our discussion today, and be sure to tune in to our next podcast, which will be posted soon. Thank you.